Let's get started for today. Welcome everyone to today's Public Health Essentials webinar. I'm Christine Ganella. I'm the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Public Health Association and the Managing Director of Strategy Development with Public Health Management Corporation. Today's webinar is being hosted by the Pennsylvania Public Health Association and Public Health Management Corporation. Our webinar is being recorded and will be available next week on Train PA's Learning Management System. And additionally, a link to the recording will be sent to all registrants. All participants will be muted throughout the presentation, and we encourage you to submit questions during the presentation. To do so, please use the Q&A tab on your Zoom control panel, and it will be relayed to presenters and answered at the end of the webinar or during the webinar session. Use the chat feature to introduce yourself and share any tech issues. And to enable captions, please click on the closed caption button along the bottom of your Zoom window. You will see the option to enable live transcripts. And just keep an eye out for a webinar survey. It will pop up at the end of the webinar. And please take a few minutes to complete the survey evaluating our webinar today. Your feedback is critical to the ongoing development of our webinar topics. Once again, my name is Christine Ganella. I'm the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Public Health Association and Managing Director of Strategy Development with Public Health Management Corporation. I'm excited to announce today's webinar topic, which is Pennsylvania's urban forestry, climate, and health initiatives. The Pennsylvania Public Health Association is the state association of the American Public Health Association and seeks to advance health and all policies throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Public Health Management Corporation represents the Public Health Institute of both Pennsylvania and Delaware, and we seek to build healthier communities through partnerships with government, foundations, businesses, and community-based organizations. The Public Health Management Corporation fulfills its mission to improve the health of the community by providing outreach, health promotion, education, research planning, technical assistance, and direct service. And so before we dive in today, I'd love for you to meet our amazing leaders guiding today's discussion. Each of our leaders on today's webinar brings valuable experience and passion to their work. First, we have Danielle Krummerin, Executive Director of the Tree Pittsburgh. For over 20 years, Danielle has worked in various capacities in the Pittsburgh environmental community. Danielle has served as Tree Pittsburgh Executive Director for 18 years, where she has led the organization through significant growth, including their effort to transform a former steel mill site into Tree Pittsburgh's headquarters, including a tree nursery, seed lab, education center, and office building. Danielle has also led the effort to develop the City of Pittsburgh's very first urban forest master plan and tree equity plan. And she launched the Regional Tree Canopy Alliance, which was awarded an $8 million in 2023 from the U.S. Forest Service to implement tree planting and tree care in environmental justice communities across Allegheny County. Prior to joining Tree Pittsburgh in 2007, Danielle was the founding board president and executive director of Allegheny Clean Ways, a group dedicated to empowering people to fight illegal dumping and littering in Allegheny County. In 2011, Danielle was a board member of the Alliance for Community Trees, the only national organization solely focused on the needs of those engaged in urban forestry. And in 2015, Act Trees president, she led the merger of Act Trees with Arbor Day Foundation, where she now sits as on the board of trustees. We also have Kate Els, who is with us today. Kate is the Community Forest Manager with Tree Philly. Kate leads the Community Forestry team and the community-based programming of Tree Philly. Kate has a BA in English and Gender Studies from Rutgers University, and Kate found her way to gardening through mentors, friends, and great books. She has expressed her deep love of Philadelphia by caring for public green spaces, tending historic gardens, and coordinating community-led food sovereignty projects. She's grateful to share her enthusiasm for helping empower communities to build and maintain thriving, healthy communities. So what an awesome background on our panelists today. Without further ado, Danielle, I'm going to transition over to you to take it from here.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here today. to talk to you about Tree Pittsburgh and the connection between trees and health. Next slide, please. Tree Pittsburgh has been around for almost 20 years. Next year is our anniversary, and we work across Allegheny County in southwestern Pennsylvania to plant trees, care for trees, advocate for trees, engage the community in planning around trees. So it's been a great pleasure to be part of this wonderful organization. Next slide. So this will be a bit of a primer for you, and I have a feeling that many people on this call know a lot of this information already, but I think it's great to remind you and also reinforce this information with the fact that there's a lot of research now, academic research that connects trees and health and really puts them at the top of the when you think about social determinants of health, trees should certainly be on your list. When we think of cardiovascular diseases, heat-related diseases, biodiversity, the need for, physical activity, trees certainly get people outside. Thinking about stormwater management and flooding and, just public safety in general. Social cohesion is something that we know, Kate and I working with community residents see that a simple tree planting can turn into so much more and build social bonds, which then there's more eyes on the street. You see crime reduced, you see lots of great projects follow. So definitely when thinking about social cohesion, trees are very powerful. Reducing stress, cleaning the air. Pittsburgh, go ahead, next slide, thank you. Pittsburgh has one of the worst air qualities in the nation. There's a number of reasons why that is, but just recently, the American Lung Association gave Pittsburgh a failing grade. We still have heavy industry in the area, and also our topography impacts pollution getting trapped down in the river valleys. Of course, we have, major transportation corridors. So trees are a really powerful way to clean the air. And this is something that in Pittsburgh, we stress a lot. Next slide. So thinking about the data that we have available to us when we think about some of these health impacts, there is an effort in Pittsburgh called the Breathe Project, which is all about public health and air quality. And we have this great map here that you can see of Pittsburgh. If you're familiar with our city, you can see the triangle there right under the word Pittsburgh, and that's downtown. And you could trace your eyes in 3 different directions and see that those are our 3 rivers. And if you look to the left, you can see the map of our tree canopy. And if you move your eyes back and forth, it should pop out to you pretty quickly that a lot of those red zones where we see a lot of the air pollution, it just so happens that there's low tree canopy in those areas as well. So interesting correlation to look at when you think about air and trees. Next slide. Heat is a major topic across the nation. We all feel this, literally feel it. There's a lot of cities, colleagues of mine in other parts of the country that their mayor's offices actually have a heat department now. Of course, in the Southwest, you'll see this in the Southeast, but more and more in dense urban areas, you'll see efforts directed to heat specifically. So we know the cooling impact of trees. This is one of when we talk about residents and the benefits of trees, this is one that always rises to the top when we think about nice shady trees, tree-lined streets. Next slide. So again, we have data on heat. So if we look to the right, this is surface temperature. This is an older map, but just to give you an example, I have some newer ones I'll show you as well. But again, when we move our eyes back and forth and we see the redder sections of the heat map or the lighter sections of the tree canopy map, to me, this is not rocket science. We don't need research to show us that it's cooler under a tree. This is something that anyone can relate to. So next slide, please. We also know that trees improve our mental health. And this is something that during COVID, especially when we were all locked in our homes, we in Pittsburgh saw record use of our parks. In fact, I live across the street from one of the city's major parks, and I actually started avoiding the park during lockdown because it was so crowded. It really brought to top of mind the need and the important role that trees play in in how we feel, right? We know forest bathing is a thing now. We know doctors are giving kids prescriptions to go out to a park and play. We need to get outside. We need all that great cortisol release that we get from trees. So lots of great studies here. And I specifically wanted to point this one out, this Carnegie Mellon University study on the right here, that this came out in 2021, that really talked about the spike in depression from folks having a lack of physical activity. And this is a real thing with our youth. And something I'm going to touch upon again here in a moment when we think about how this impacts our programming at Tree Pittsburgh. Next slide. So a couple reality checks that I think need to be entered into this conversation. One of them is climate change impacts are only increasing. We are seeing hotter temperatures, we're seeing erratic storms, and it is imperative that we help communities to be more resilient. So when we do go out into neighborhoods and meet with residents, we are looking at what we do through the lens of climate resiliency and thinking about all the health impacts that climate change has, particularly through heat and storms that we are experiencing firsthand here in Pittsburgh, and I'm sure many of you across the Commonwealth are feeling as well. Next slide. Another reality check is that tree canopy is not equally distributed. Pittsburghers are not getting the same benefits equally across the city, right? This is exactly the same in Philly, and I'm sure Kate is going to talk to you about it. In fact, we see this in every major US city across the nation. The tree canopy is not equally distributed. So the health and negative health impacts of not having those trees are higher in areas with low tree canopy. So we're seeing a major health disparity that aligns with tree canopy. Next slide. And I wanted to inject this one as well, this slide, because when we think about trees and health, not every tree benefits you equally, right? If you have this is a staircase in Pittsburgh. We have lots of old staircases. That's how people used to get around. And many of them are horribly overgrown. So would you look at this picture and think, oh, look at this wonderful green asset that this community has? You know, folks aren't using this. It's not safe. It's not accessible. It's scary. It causes more stress than it does, you know, benefiting, giving them all the green benefits that a maintained, beautiful park would provide somebody. So I think it's really important when we're thinking about how trees impact health in parks and green spaces, that we always mention that they have to be maintained. Otherwise, it's looked at as blight, and all the bad things that follow blight would follow a scenario like this. Next slide. Again, just bringing home the inequity. I think most folks on this call are well aware of, you know, the idea of social determinants of health, as I mentioned earlier. And this in our world of urban forestry, this is a driver of all of our planning. So if we go to the next slide, I'll show you here. So thinking about, okay, now knowing all of this health data, we have the heat, we have the air pollution, we know we have socioeconomic information, we know where food deserts are, right? So all of this great data is available to us now. And the beauty is it's free. It's just open source for the most part, which is really exciting to folks like us who could now tell a whole different story and take a different approach to our work. So what you're seeing here, this is a map that shows you environmental justice areas. And the state of Pennsylvania developed their own map. Our county health department also has an environmental justice map that's a little different than the state map. And then the feds have their map. So we had the Justice 40 layer that President Biden put out there. So when we put all of this together, this allows us to really target areas where our trees can have the greatest impact, right? So if you could remember in your mind's eye, the map that I showed you earlier of the air and the heat, it looks very similar to this one when you think about the color comparisons. So we use the data to identify where we're going to do our programs. Next slide. So then, of course, anytime we're dealing with equality and justice, right, the people that our work impacts need to be part of the planning process. So, and you're going to hear this from Kate as well. Philadelphia has done an amazing job of engaging the public in urban forestry planning. So we developed a model, and this is not something we invented. This was existing, where we answer these questions. What do we have? What do we want? How do we get there? And how are we doing? So along the ways, we're bringing in public health to the discussion, right? We want to, if you go to the next slide, we want to know, what are those concerns that they have in their community? Are they thinking about asthma? Are they thinking about the fact that they don't have a grocery store with fresh food within walking distance? Are they thinking about how hot it is and how their grandma, who lives alone in her house, doesn't have air conditioning, that she's suffering horribly from the heat? People can't breathe. I mean, all of these things that go along, right? What are people's concerns? And then how do we then bring the trees into the discussion? So the slide you see here, this is just an example of some of the questions we ask when we go into communities. This is kind of jumping to the what do we want section. But it all ties together, right? So if you go to the next slide, here we are, we're at a community meeting talking to people about their concerns. And we always take maps with us, right? The map on the right this is a current map of heat in one of the areas that we're targeting, called Beltshoover. And take your eye to the top right of your screen, and you could see that's where the heat is. So when we're out talking to residents at community events, we talk to them about heat, right? Where are the hot spots in your neighborhood? And we don't mean the cool places to hang out, right? We mean the literally hot areas. And it's been fun. We were walking this particular neighborhood, and the mail carrier was out, and we stopped her and said, "Hey, what's the hottest street in Beltshoover?" And we literally were standing on it. She said, "This street," and there was not a tree to be seen. It was just full sun. So by engaging residents and talking about these health issues, it really just, it changes the dynamic, and it helps us to really direct the tree plantings where we'll have this big impact. And we created this fan. A lot of people like to have fans at church or at bingo or wherever. So we knew fans would be popular, and we tried to tie in the trees on the fan there. And there's a QR code that takes you to the page where the community plan is for this neighborhood. Next slide. Here again, and here's another neighborhood. So this map is cancer risk here, you could see. This is a community in the Monongahela Valley that was filled with heavy industry. U.S. Steel is based here. The steel mill is still going. You may have seen in the news, there was a horrible explosion that killed one of their workers recently. When it comes to the definition of environmental justice, this community checks all the boxes. So, bringing in this information, the public health information, the air quality is a big, big issue in this neck of the woods. We're able to talk to people in a way that really resonates with them. And when you see your community on a map and you're bright purple, look at this. Out of all these areas, it's just jumping out at you. For some people, it's the first they've ever seen or heard about it. So here we are planting trees with some children there at a school, engaging the youth. And we talk to the kids about all of the health data as well, just like we talk to adults. Next slide. Again, see, you're gonna see this theme here. Here we have a neighborhood called Homewood. And on the left, you can see air pollution, the red hot spots there. And on the right, you see the heat. There is a busway that goes through this neighborhood. So working with those residents, let's see, go ahead to the next slide. we were able to use all of this data. And then in their plan for their community, we were able to focus in on some of those hotspots, and they all wanted to plant around the busway. So this was a major effort. So not only were we helping with the heat issue, we were also helping with noise, sight lines, making it more beautiful, and then also the air quality as well. So we're able to take that health data, implement it into the plan. Next slide. So I just have a couple more slides, and I wanted to, this one's near and dear to my heart. I have children myself, and they talk to me about their fears for the future. This is a real thing, climate anxiety. It could keep a lot of us up at night thinking about, what does the future hold? Will my kids ever get to go sled riding? You know, like what's the future going to look like for them? So we take this really seriously at Tree Pittsburgh, and we do that by engaging kids. And when I talk to kids, I always say, we love you and care about you. And that's why I work at Tree Pittsburgh, because I want a better future for you. So these kids need to know that we care, that we're doing something, whether the politicians are going to do something or not, they can make change right in their own community. So it's really important that we are helping to calm their anxiety a bit by empowering them with tools to have some kind of control, even if it's right in their front yard. Next slide. So this is my final slide before I turn it over to Kate. You may be asking yourself, well, when are you done, right? How much green do you need? I call him Dr. Cecil because I can never pronounce his last name properly, but he's one of my heroes. He's from Holland, and his lab came up with this concept of 330-300. And the idea is that you should be able to see at least 3 trees from your window of your house. Okay, you should have 30% tree canopy in your community, and you should be at least, a minimum of 300 meters from some kind of park or green space. And this graphic on the left, this is from some academic research that tested his theory. Does this truly impact public health? And what the study shows is that yes, it does. And there's a link here that you could check out afterwards. But this is at least some way for us to have some benchmarks, some goals to reach. The tree canopy in Pittsburgh is 40%, which is really good, way more than Philly, right? But it's our hillsides. Most of the trees are on our steep slopes that aren't built out. They were coal mined, there's landslide issues, so it's a little skewed. But there are neighborhoods that have 5% tree canopy. So how do we take them from 5 to 30? How do we get trees outside of your house? How do we get you close to a park? So this gives you some really good structure with your city planning department as an organization to help create some goals around the work that you do. So with that, I will end, and I will look forward to your questions at the end, and I will turn it to Kate.
Thanks so much, Danielle. And I just want to say a huge thank you to the host today for having us, and specifically to Danielle for partnering with me in this presentation. We continually look across the state to our colleagues in Pittsburgh for inspiration, steal some ideas, work together. We have an amazing statewide program that connects us at a conference coming up in September. So that's a little plug. The Urban and Community Forestry conference, the state conference coming up in September. It's free and online. So I'm really grateful to Danielle for kind of grounding our work in the science and the background and the hard data and also the feelings in it, right? Like the feelings of access and equity. So I'm going to, in my part of the presentation, give a little bit of a background on our programming, how we've grown and changed, and our work to more successfully implement the goals of our program through partnerships. As I find that we can provide data to residents, we can talk about the science, we can talk about lack of access, but a lot of residents in Philadelphia have bad experiences with trees, poor ambassadors, and experience them as an expensive burden that maybe isn't worth it. So how do we work with residents in Philadelphia to kind of rebuild trust, to address their concerns? We hear them out and we work together to kind of build healthier communities together as a city agency. So Thanks for the slide change. Tree Philly is a program of Philadelphia Parks and Recreation. It's a community forestry program, so we're the forward-facing program of Parks and Rec. So a little different. We're kind of nested inside of a city agency under the Urban Forestry Unit at Parks and Rec. The Urban Forestry Unit is led by our city's first city forester, Erica Smith-Fitchman, who led the work on the Philly Tree Plan, which I'll talk about later. And it also includes, our unit also includes the street tree office, a regional park system, arborist crews, inspectors, contract managers, and customer service staff. Parks and Rec proudly stewards a majority of our city's urban forest. Parks, of course, over 10,000 acres, but also trees planted in the right of way that we call street trees. Slide, please. A little background on Tree Philly, our community forestry program, the background of us, our work. Philly created its first Office of Sustainability, and that office's Greenworks plan with the goal of making Philadelphia the greenest city in America. It was launched in 2009. In that plan, it included a goal to increase the tree canopy to 30%. So just moments ago, Danielle was talking about that canopy goal as a sort of standard in the industry. So they wanted to reach 30% canopy in every neighborhood, and they tasked PPR with figuring out how to do that. First, we needed to understand what it was we already had. So we conducted a tree canopy assessment to determine where our existing tree canopy was and where there was the most potential for new canopy growth. Slide, please. Through these studies, two major revelations led to the programmatic decisions of Parks and Rec and Tree Philly. One, there were areas of the city with much greater tree canopy coverage in other neighborhoods. Like, we already knew this, Danielle has gone through that. It's an issue of access, but this study revealed the gravity of the difference. And secondly, that Philadelphia's residents actually control the majority of the city's tree canopy on private property, private residential property, and they also have the most opportunity for tree planting. So we came to understand that private property tree planting offered the greatest opportunity, so it made sense to equip residents with the tools that they needed to plant and care for trees on their property. So that became a central part of reaching that 30% magic number that Danielle mentioned, and also internally to the city's strategic planning. Tree Philly's program grew from there, distributing free container trees to residents for planting on private property. And since then, we've distributed close to 34,000 free trees in Philadelphia. Tree Philly as a program, has evolved over the years, but the core of the efforts remain the same. Our current mission states, Tree Philly empowers community members to enrich life in their neighborhoods through the planting, care of, and connection with trees. Tree Philly works to plant and care for an equitable tree canopy for all residents by providing free, accessible educational and material resources and nurturing relationships between neighbors, institutions, and the land that we live on. In all our work, we strive to follow the principles and practices of environmental justice. We still hold our free yard tree giveaway events starting up soon in October. You'll see us throughout the city distributing free trees. In the photo, you see a resident walking his fig tree home from FDR Park in South Philly. And you also see up there neighbors gathering at the Community Greeting Festival at Tacony Creek Park. But we've also strengthened our programming through partnerships. And I'll focus on one sort of partnership first, but I'll touch on a few. Slide. Most importantly, and first off, our community forestry partnerships. We fundraise to provide grants to community groups and neighborhood leaders to work with us on projects in their neighborhoods. These projects started out and continue to be primarily based around yard tree distribution, but we've expanded to include educational programming, tree stewardship and care, and more. I just want to highlight some of our partners here because I wish they could speak for themselves, but you'll see on the left, me and Miss Kareen, who's been planting trees in West Philly for decades and taught me a lot. Ivana Gonzalez in the middle, who worked with Esperanza to support a number of environmental justice initiatives in the region that they serve in North Philly. And on the right, Megan and Miss Elaine, who share trees with their neighbors in Cobbs Creek and Haddington. They work together in this photo on a pollinator garden. They also focus on literacy work, trail access to a public green space, for communities who have lived in Cobbs Creek and Haddington for generations. Slide, thanks. Our partners guide our work in their communities, share resources and information with their neighbors, and they bring neighborhood level organizing expertise to Tree Philly's work. We work hard to build trust with our partners. That's the key. And through our relationship with their guidance, build trust with the residents that we serve. So we're not just talking about our neighbors and the communities we serve, but we're talking with them, alongside of them. We work together on projects, adjust programming to feedback, and hope to build our partners' capacity and urban forestry expertise so they can take ownership of the projects that we work on, or that they work on. Miss Elaine again on the left, and Raven table together at an event. So tabling at resource fairs brings awareness of city resources to people who may not have heard about it. I love Danielle's big map where people can kind of point to spaces that they're familiar with. I'm definitely going to steal that idea. Mr. Earl and Mr. Leonard are lifelong in the center. They're lifelong environmental activists in the Eastwick neighborhood in Southwest. So they've worked on projects for remediating brownfields in their neighborhood, climate resilience planning, and now they incorporate tree distribution into their organizing work. And then on the right, gardeners and organizers from Tioga Hope Park and Garden in the Nicetown, Tioga neighborhood, along with our partners and their partners at the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society. This was a work day at their garden, taking care of some trees, pruning some trees on site, and we'll also share trees from that garden, distribute trees from their space to their neighbors. Slide. So as Danielle said, there's a value in grounding our work through academic partnerships as well. So as we strengthen our community connections, we also work with academic partners to strengthen the understanding of our work, especially how it affects the health of our city's residents. We understand that the benefits of a healthy, well cared for urban forest would provide serious health benefits for folks. And to build on that base of scientific research, we've been so lucky to have some amazing researchers here in Philly or previously stationed here. People like Dr. South of University of Pennsylvania and Drs. Locke, Kondo, and Roman of the Forest Service. Here are some examples of their work, but there's plenty online. And evidence presented in articles like these and in Danielle's slides help ground urban and community forestry as public health infrastructure, right? Trees are not just a nice to have, they're a necessary part of our urban ecosystem, and it takes work to bring them to communities that need them most. Here's a particularly striking finding from a locally based research project that states a health assessment of Philly's canopy goals, which stated that they estimated that 403 premature deaths overall would be prevented annually in Philadelphia if the city were able to meet its goal of increasing tree canopy to 30%. So I'm not sure you can make a much stronger case for investing in our urban forest. And from there, we continue to lean on these partnerships, and we did lean on them in the creation of the Philly Tree Plan, which was released in February 2023. The Philly Tree Plan is a 10-year strategic plan for the planting and care of our urban forest here in Philadelphia. This plan offers strategies, but also prioritizes where these strategies should be implemented. And it's the guide for Tree Philly's work and urban forestry work at large in the city. There's a QR code there if you want to visit or read through the plan yourself. Here again, partnerships were key. The plan assembled a huge group of people with varying levels and different expertise, backgrounds, and perspectives, and towards different ends at different points in the plan creation. We had the consulting team led by Hinge Collective, and they're based right here in Philadelphia and continue to work with us on projects stemming from the tree plan. We had our project team, which included city, department, nonprofit partners, state and federal agencies. These are folks who think about trees every day, or at least most days. The steering committee included over 100 stakeholders, and the Community Voices Steering Committee guided the planning process and held it accountable to the concerns of their community, and that represented grassroots neighborhood greening efforts. We knew that the power of the plan centered in how it represented the interests of Philadelphians, those affected by decisions made and its eventual implementation. So we really leaned heavily into community engagement to support our findings and the assumptions that we made as folks who work in the field. We used a citywide survey offered in multiple languages and collected stories from throughout the city. We had a community meeting tour where Tree Philly staff person requested time at already scheduled community meetings in our priority areas. So going to where people were, not asking them to come to us to receive feedback directly from residents. We had paid neighborhood ambassadors who were compensated to interview folks about their experience with trees. They were not there to promote trees, right? They're not in community, they're not engaging folks around where trees should be planted, or they wanted honest feedback about their experience with trees in their neighborhoods. We had a stakeholder workshop, a virtual open house, and finally a little fun, an Instagram photo challenge. And just backing up a little, Philly is, of course, a really big city. Going back a couple slides, you'll remember we had an understanding of quantitatively where there was more or less tree canopy coverage, right? We had LiDAR, we had surveys, we had understood, disparity in canopy, but we wanted to qualify this information with its effects through public health and other markers. And this would influence first where we'd focus our engagement strategies. So before the plan was released, where did we want to hear from most? And then eventually implementation of the plan's goals, which is where we are now. The public health criteria we used included asthma, mental health, and cancer. I think I'm probably speaking to a room of experts on this, but it didn't surprise us that the neighborhoods with lower tree canopy had higher rates of asthma and other chronic conditions, and worse mental health outcomes for our neighbors who lived there. Here's a breakdown of the results of our engagement strategy. I want to focus here on the percentage of the response to engagement. A majority of it came from our priority areas, right? So we set our priorities from where we wanted to hear from. And we did receive a majority from those areas, but it didn't come easy, right? We had to pause, adjust, implement different strategies so that we could hear from people that we needed to hear from, not just the really highly motivated folks who think about trees the way that we do, or at least as often as we do. One of my favorite parts of the plan's development was the incorporation of storytelling into our engagement process. This ensured that the value of our urban forests was understood in more intimate, personal means, not just the cold hard facts. During Philadelphians' busy day-to-day, trees may fade into the background or blend into the landscape. But through our engagement, we learned that the value still wasn't lost, that people had strong memories and current connections to the trees that they encountered in their lives. So after the engagement process, work wasn't done. We had some key takeaways from our engagement process. And here are some of those: that trees have value, and that residents recognize that value, that there's disparity in tree canopy, and that it feels personal. Trees can be a burden, especially a financial burden to homeowners, that we need to improve access to programs and services, that maintenance builds trust, and that there's a need for clarity, consistency, coordination, and collaboration. Ultimately, we landed on the 8 main goals of the Philly Tree Plan. You can see them here. So coordinating support for trees, protecting our urban forest, growing our urban forest, reducing burden, investing in people and communities, a lot about communication, helping folks advocate, and of course, celebrate. So about a year into implementation of the plan, building off of relationships grounded in the plan's project team, a group of partners leveraged the recommendations to apply for the historic investment in urban and community forestry from the Forest Service, as Danielle mentioned. And we've received additional support from the William Penn Foundation, a local foundation. Those partners included nonprofits, city agencies, the school district, and we worked together to apply for the grant and all surrounding certain goals of the Philly Tree Plan that would be implemented by the partners. The goals of the application were to support existing programs and also to build new ones, to foster collaboration, to redistribute funds to smaller community-based organizations through the Tree Forward re-grant opportunity, and to build the city's first tree coalition. I want to shout out here now because it's active, it's happening now. The Tree Forward grant is in motion. So this is a re-grant opportunity for smaller community-based organizations. It's posted. That is a QR code where you can find the website. If you know any organizations in Philly who'd be interested in incorporating urban forestry into their work or already actively doing this work but need some extra support, it's a pretty open opportunity and would really, really like to see a ton of applicants for it. These groups would carry out projects that ensure long-term sustainability of the urban forest in the high priority areas. So they would happen within the areas designated in the tree plan. So please share it around if you or someone you know might be interested in the opportunity. Additionally, that tree coalition goal, Emily from PHMC, me, the city forester, our consultant Hinge, I think Ari's here, and an amazing project team of nonprofits and organizational partners, as well as priority area liaisons. So really pulling out from the group who worked on the Philly tree plan, but also adding new faces who've gotten into the work since then, are working together to build the foundation of the Philly Tree Coalition. Once established, the coalition and its paid director, housed at the Public Health Management Corporation, will coordinate all tree-related activities in Philadelphia, and will be the conduit for communities and community leaders to continue to be a vital part of the effort to advance the Philly Tree Plan's goals. The tree plan has a recommendation for a city advisory committee, which the coalition will act it as. However, in this situation, we're really excited they'll have a paid director and the support of the Public Health Management Corporation. So I think it kind of gives it a little bit more teeth. The project team, again, like I said, mirrored the steering committee from the tree plan. And really focusing on representation from neighborhood-based groups and other organizations outside of the grant partners. And here's a little tease about what will come about once the coalition is fully standing up. We've been working on the project as a team since last winter to build out the organizational structure, including the governance structure seen here, which allows for a flow of power up from community and smaller organizations to lead decisions. This group, along with subject matter experts and others, will also make up a committee formed around the tree plan goals. Like I said, the coalition will be housed at the Public Health Management Corporation, so we're incredibly grateful for their partnership. They also managed our grants from the Forest Service, and they're managing the Tree Forward regrant program, opening up opportunities to a larger community here in Philadelphia. So the coalition will both push forward and advocate for the goals of the plan, but hold organizations accountable and kind of represent the public health benefits of the work and the long-term vision of a Philly tree plan and Philly's community forestry efforts at large, because there's a lot of groups, a lot of individuals, and a lot of passionate people. So I think the coalition will be a really exciting opportunity to bring us all into a room and work in tandem towards the goals of the plan. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Danielle and Kate. What a wonderful presentation, and just humbling to see all of the phenomenal work that is being done and anchoring both sides of our state. And I know that there is a lot of information sharing and learning that goes on across our different cities. So thank you so much for providing us that excellent in-depth information. I know that in the chat that Emily had provided a link to some of the studies that were referenced in the discussion, and then also provided a link to the website where the RFP that Kate mentioned is posted to. So if people are interested in taking a look at that, using that as a template, or just more interested in pursuing, please feel free to access those links. I wanted to open it up for questions. I don't see any in the Q&A. But actually, Diane, I wanted to ask you, or Danielle, I wanted to ask you, you have such a phenomenal background in this work. And I'm wondering, sort of, as we go into the next year or two, knowing that some of our funding has shifted and priorities have shifted, sort of what is sort of the one thing that keeps you moving forward and continuing to keep sort of the visionary spirit that really feels like has driven you forward over these last couple of years?
Yeah, I think it's all the people that we work with. You know, Kate had all those great pictures of all the different Philadelphians, engaging with trees, and it's the same in Pittsburgh. I can have the same slide. The residents are so passionate, and they're not going to let us slide in any way, right? They're calling all the time, and everyone's ready to go. And we just, we make it work. We're Pittsburgh, and we've been in the ashes before, and I think we come from a really resilient stock of people, and I think there's just no stopping us.
Thanks, Danielle. Kate, I wonder for you, like what's keeps you driving forward?
Thanks for seeing. I was thinking similar. I mean, honestly, the same thing as like on most presentations I'm afforded the opportunity to do, I really try to highlight the partners who do the work for much less compensation than they should get, and that have been doing the work much longer than I've been here in Philly. And a reminder that like, yeah, that the opportunities I'm gonna flow even within a year. Like, we had a huge investment that now is we're never sure what the next day is gonna bring, but the folks that we work with, especially the elders that I connect with in my work, like help me understand that like they're gonna continue to show up, they're gonna continue to do the work. The tree plan happened first, right? And all that happened before that came and culminated at that point. So I mean, it's scary, obviously, and very stressful, but I mean, it like Danielle said, we got two real tough cities on either side of the state that are ready to keep moving forward.
That's wonderful, and such an amazing template for opportunities for other cities who haven't quite dug as deep to use as a template for work. So again, thank you both for sharing just your expertise, sharing the relationships that have really helped to drive your work forward, and some of the really great resources that have come out of your work. Just really grateful for being able to host you today. I would be remiss if I didn't plug some opportunities to engage with the Pennsylvania Public Health Association. We will be at the American Public Health Association conference in the beginning of November, and we will be hosting a Mid-Atlantic breakfast convening. It will be from 8 to 10:30 on Sunday, November 2nd. If you're interested in attending, it's $25 per person. If cost is an issue, reach out to us. We really just want to create a space where we can come together, talk more broadly about some of the public health opportunities for partnership and concerns that we have, and just ways that we can all partner to move forward in the space of public health. And I know that Hayden is going to pop in our survey link if that hasn't happened already, but if you're interested in being more engaged with the Pennsylvania Public Health Association, follow us on social media. We have our website as well as our social media links here. Our team keeps information up to date, shares information. There has been a constant evolving updates in the public health space over the last couple of months. So we do our best to kind of keep a pulse on things. So please follow us here if you're interested in learning more. So again, I want to thank both Danielle and Kate for joining us today. And thank you to all of the attendees for today's webinar. Again, this recording will be accessible via Train PA, as well as we'll send it out to all of our registrants. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful weekend. Take care.